pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Mr. Smith? Here. Ms. Selchuk? Here.
I'm going to turn it over to you.
Mr.
saying
Lindemann?
that
Here.
you're just attending this meeting.
Mr. Ramos? Mr. Burry?
Here, and for the record, Mr. Ramos has got some personal business he's taking care of, so he's excused. Item D, approval of the minutes from July 18, 2023 of the special board meeting. Mr. Lindemann.
I move to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
By Ms. Salchow. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Selchuk? Yes. Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Burry?
Yes. Item E, summary of current events. Ms. Samaniego, Superintendent's report.
Good evening, Mr. Vrain, and members of the board, members of our community and staff. First and foremost, I'd like to introduce and welcome our this year's ex-officio member, Douglas High School Student Body President, Victor Luna. And at this time, I will have him come up and take his position in his chair. He will not be giving his full report as school just started on Wednesday, but I wanted the opportunity to bring him on board and introduce him tonight. And he will be joining us starting in September. And that will be your hot seat. All right?
Thank you.
Did you want to make any comments or by way of introduction or anything?
I want to say thank you so much for this platform that I've been given. I'm very excited to work with all of you and get to know all of you throughout this school year as ex-officio member and serve the public.
Very good.
Thank you.
Glad to have you.
We also had a great first week of school. School started on Wednesday, so if you were trying to get to Walmart from your side of town, it might have taken a little bit longer. Last week, the members of my leadership team and I, we visited schools during the first 3 days of schools, and so we all separated and visited at least a couple sites during the first 3 days. We saw some crying children in preschool, a couple crying parents. But for the most part, I think parents were the most excited to be sending their kids off to the teachers. And so also happy to report that the school facility board funded AC project for Heber Middle School cafeteria is complete and done. Finito after how long? A year?
Yeah,
A
more
year.
than a year.
And that was the school facility board project. So that's complete. Still pending are RBMS and Clausen roof projects, right?
Yes, and we're going to bring that to the board for approval.
Yes. This Saturday, we also had the annual Douglas Care For event at the airport park, and that was where community partners gave out free school supplies to the youth in our community. And so DUSD participated, and both Mrs. Cox and I attended along with new student center staff. And so a big thank you to our new student center staff because they set up, they organized the school supplies, and so we saw a lot of families there on Saturday. And last but not least, also happy to announce that Mrs. Barayardos, as you know, has had a very successful year, and I believe she made it to the top 10, Mrs. Rodriguez, for top 15, and then I think there was going to be another top something, but for the Arizona Teacher of the Year, and so she will be going in the very near future for her interview. And so it's a very extensive process and not something that they just take lightly, so she'll be attending that and interviewing for that position. And that is all I have for my update.
Governing board members' reports. Mr. Lindemann.
I have one thing. I was notified, of course, the traffic at the beginning of school around the schools are not ideal. And so on the city side, the public works people are going around and painting the no parking signs so they're a little bit brighter and everybody can mitigate those problems when they drop their kids off. So thank you to the city.
Yes,
Ms.
thank you.
Salchow.
No, not at this time.
Mr. Smith? Reports under item H, year-to-date, Mr. Soto.
Under F, yeah. Good afternoon, Mr. President, board members. Again, this is the report for the month of July. This will be the first month of the fiscal year. As you may notice, there's a lot of still of unencumbered
amount. So again, it's the first month, and not everybody was in payroll, and all of the POs haven't been encumbered. So you're going to see a big difference on next month's report. But for now, this is what we have. I don't know if you have specific questions.
Members of the board? I have a question, just kind of following up. She alluded to something that reminded me, the marquees of all of these dead marquees on these schools. What's the progress on those?
We're still waiting for them to arrive. They have been ordered and everything. The only ones that, as you know, that we got are Huber and Clausen are the ones that are operating right now. We're still waiting on the company to send us the rest of them. As you know, we order marquees for all of the other schools too.
Months ago. So there's
Yeah.
delays in that too.
Okay. And then, speaking of the budget, and know it's early on, but always uppermost in our mind is what we're going to be doing for the employees this year. And you might say, well, isn't that premature and early to talk about it? It's not. Now is the time to be thinking about it. And I know that, what was the final percentage for the teachers last year? 6%?
5.
5. And the administrators?
5.
Well, it was,
Oh, it was a new salary schedule.
salary schedule,
Yeah.
so on average.
Okay, and then
yeah.
the classified, because of other circumstances, they're addressed a different way. We, members of the board, and this is consistent with our philosophy, right? We want to just make sure that as you go through the expenditures and working up to looking at all the encumbrances and working up to that time that always comes upon us before we know it.
Right.
We want to ensure, because you assured the board last year that you could sustain the 5%, right?
Correct.
So we want to make sure that that's at the very minimum, the launching pad, right? The 5%, right?
That's wishful thinking, yes.
No,
No, at a minimum.
I'm suggesting it now, that you be thinking about that, so that this, we're right at the beginning of the year, so as we go along, then you're always sensitive to the fact that this board is always looking at the most we can do,
Yeah,
right? Okay.
absolutely.
I just wanted to remind you that, first meeting of the year.
And one of the things that we will be looking at rather quickly is the possibility of doing the longevity for our classified staff. If you recall,
Right.
we had members of our staff come to do a call to the public, I believe. And so our longevity has been given to classified in steps. We're going to be looking at whatever remaining steps, instead of giving it in the next 3 years, we're going to be looking at the possibility of doing it this year all in one lump sum too, for our classified staff. So that's in the works.
Okay, and members of the board, it's worthy of a little discussion. I always mention that, and I always do it early. And I think, and I know you agree because of the many discussions we've had about it publicly, and what our attitude is towards that. But unless we make him sensitive now, which he always is anyway, because there's always a constant reminder. But in building that budget and beginning with the expenditures and the encumbrances, he needs to be, and I keep saying him because that's ultimately his responsibility, and sensitive to the fact that we do want to at least have a launching pad of where we were last year, at least 5%. And then we want to go more. And I just want to make sure, just for discussion, that, and as part of the budget, that the board it knows and that he knows philosophically that that's what we definitely want to do, that he comes back and he says, oh, I'm going to do a lot better than 5, I'm going to go 7, I'm going to go 8. That's what we want him to do, right? We want him to do something like that, okay? So that we don't get to the end of the year and then we're scurrying around and wondering where the money's going to come from. We're going to talk about 301 monies in a minute, right? And that's another issue. Okay, so as long as we got that across, we'll move on to human resources. Denise.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, board members, community, and staff. Currently, our enrollment as of today is 3,845. We are still enrolling students as well as withdrawing students. And so when looking at our numbers, which are preliminary in our primary grades or elementary, we have some classrooms that are closed due to numbers, reaching the capacity. So Clausen, kinder, first, and second grades right now are closed. Ferris, second grade is closed. Joe Carlson Kinder is closed. Sarah Marley Kinder is closed. And at Stevenson, first, fourth, and fifth. And again, they're preliminary numbers after the 10-day drop, which is scheduled for August 15th. we will have a better idea of where our numbers stand at that point. We also ran comparability with the state to ensure that all of our class sizes, the ratio of teachers to student is comparable, and at this point, all sites are comparable. So we will continue to monitor that. In terms of human resources and teachers, we still have a few vacancies that we are needing to fill. Many of our teachers who are either H1 or J1 are in the process of arriving soon, so we are managing all of that at this point.
Okay. Is there anything you want to follow up regarding any of that?
No, I just want to follow up on the comparability, and as I mentioned, Mr. Lindeman has been very interested in our K-3, and rightfully so, because we want those class sizes to remain on the lower end if possible. And so when I mentioned the comparability, I asked the question, give me the law, give me where it states that a school cannot have more than X number of teachers. And so I had Mrs. Herrera do some research, and she found out that, for example, if we were to hire 2 more teachers at Stevenson, the formula right now, student to teacher ratio, is showing that we don't need any more teachers based on the comparability. However, if the decision of the board were to, or mine, to recommend a few more teaching positions to decrease the numbers in K-3, we have to submit something official in writing as to a justification for wanting to do what we're doing, because when they don't, when you're out of compliance with the comparability, then there's issues of like Title I funding and all of that. So I wanted to know the law, and I wanted to know where it stated, because I've always heard about it, but I never knew where it came from. So there is an actual compliance form that must be submitted when a district decides to hire more teachers versus what the state is saying you need to have at each school. So I wanted to report on that.
Okay,
So-
Denise,
Yes.
that's it?
Yes.
You didn't want to follow up or anything on that either? All right,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Do we have anybody that wants to address the board? Item 2, consent agenda A, approval of the following consent agenda items. Number 1, payroll and expense voucher report, and vouchers 1, 2, and 3. Mr. Lindeman,
I move to approve the agenda items, or the consent agenda items.
second? By Ms. Selchow. Discussion regarding the, any item on that, on the consent agenda? Roll call.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Selcha? Yes. Mr. Lindeman?
Yes.
Mr. Berry?
Yes, item 3, discussion, information on the Douglas High School construction update. Ms. Samaniego.
Since we met last during our special board meeting, we have continued, both Mr. Soto, Mr. Durazo, and I, attending weekly meetings with all those involved, including our architect, our the company AMP, and getting regular updates. So since we last met on Friday, I was giving a new schedule after you all visited the site. And so the new schedule is, I want to say, still pending on some of the city inspections that, they mentioned to you during our special meeting. So the new schedule that I was given on Friday was that as of this Friday, they would probably be able to, that Rob would probably be able to do the C of O, which is the certificate of occupancy, for partial, construction, which is building R. After that, Adolphson and Peterson would have a week to take care of their punch list items, as they mentioned to you, the little odds and ends that they would need to take care of in a week. And then roughly so, by the 3rd week, we would be able to start serving with the permission of the governing board, since that item got tabled, that Mr. Pineda would use that week to start serving students in the cafeteria. And by serving, it means just allowing kids to sit in the cafeteria, allowing the staff to work the flow of the operations of the new kitchen, but not prepping their food on week 3. By week 4, then the staff would start operating the kitchen. So Mr. Pineda feels, and he met with the architect, and just a flow of operations would be best if his staff had at least a week to try to feed the kids in there, see the flow, and then start operating full-blown on the 4th week. So what my plan was, after hearing that schedule, is I would have to come to the board for probably another special board meeting once I know that the architects have signed off on the certificate of occupancy that the company has taken care of these punch list items, and I would come before the board and say, okay, this is where we're at. Do we have your approval to go with that plan of starting to serve kids 1 week and starting to fully operations by the 4th week? So that was as of Friday. We are still, not we, but the architect and the superintendent of the construction project still in conversation with city officials. I want to say that both Ms. Ana Urquijo and I have been in communication. She's been very helpful. I've met with her several times, and so has Luis Pedrosa. And we're in communication so that both entities can work together and collaborate. And she's going to be sending me a report on all the communication that they've had with AMP. Mr. Soto and Mr. Durazo attended the last meeting today at 4 o'clock, and he has some new updates.
Well, it was discussed, again, the issues with the inspections, and they're going to try to get some city people there tomorrow morning. There's still a confusion about what's the goal, and the goal from Adelson and Peterson is to let the USD utilize the cafeteria. And it seems like the city is looking at the whole project, and they don't see
Building by building.
building by building. But again, they're going to try to get together tomorrow and clear that out. So the timeline's still the same as of right now, depending on tomorrow's meeting, how that goes with the city and the inspections. There was some concerns from the board about some leaks on that building after, and they told us that those were fixed. It's just that the rain last night kind of helped to identify those leaks. So they fixed 6 leaks on that building, and they discovered one on V, which is the other building that we're discussing. But they're on it, and they were able to fix those leaks on building R at this point. So that was the main conversation today about those 2 items.
I think the most important thing that you mentioned there, and the schedule was good, and appreciate that, and that's good information for the board. The fact that the architect and the project director marginalized the city in such a manner as they did, and then your follow-up conversations with them, just so that the board knows, because those were pretty severe comments that were made by those two gentlemen. What was the conversation like of how do they figure that they can remediate the fact that, according to those gentlemen, that they didn't have people or staff adequate down there to be able to handle a project of that magnitude?
We didn't discuss that in detail. I just spoke to Mrs. Urquijo, and because she, had some concerns, and some, rightfully so, some of her staff. And so, without having all the information right before her, she said, I am gathering all the communication, whether it be via email, phone calls, or whatever she can gather. And she says, you and I don't get copies of all those communications, and I don't, and neither does she. So she says, we're going to gather. She was hoping that I could have that before this meeting so I could, talk about it a little bit, but it was too soon. So as soon as that gets compiled, she's going to send it to me. In these recent days, I have been including her on anything that I receive. And so I had a phone call today with the architect and Alan, and trying to see if I could contact Mrs. Urquijo, and maybe my suggestion at this point is to have a face-to-face meeting, because a lot gets lost in email. And when you're having different people CC'd, or who's calling the shots and who's not, then it complicates things. And so based on today's meeting, there will be somebody from the city going tomorrow. And so I think it all bundles down to the communication, and we can all improve in our communication, but I assured Ana that of course we have nothing to do with we're their client. And so I know, and I did say that Roger did speak to you afterwards, Mr. Lindemann, and said that she was very helpful, and so was Luis, anytime that we've needed to communicate. So it's not about remedying the situation, it's about hopefully seeing the end project in mind with the guidance and the requirements that the city has upon the architect. And she and I agreed that I don't want to get a building that is not done accordingly, as we've said Mr. Smith, you said it at one meeting. And so that's the job of the city. And so it's about, improving that communication and streamlining who is overseeing what and who's in charge of what, and so that Roger as the site superintendent, he should be getting all the communication first and foremost. So that's what our discussion was.
Members of the board, Mr. Lindeman?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for that information. I just want to say that all of the entities should be working together, and they are, with, no communication glitches, because the final analysis, it's for the students, it's for the benefit,
Yes.
and of course, the taxpayers are expecting a good work done for their money. So I'm glad to see
Yes.
that things are moving along.
Yeah, and we hope that after tomorrow's site visit and inspection, we move in the right direction. And maybe I think that's where the confusion lies, where the city is maybe looking at the whole project together with, and compared to A&P, they're trying to turn over Building R. And so that's where I think it needs to be clarified between them.
Thank you.
Ms. Salciani, comments regarding?
I appreciate you speaking with Mr. Keyhole
Yes.
and Mr. Pedrosa, because our conversation at the last meeting was what I feel like the really candid conversation that we had, where we could get more answers to this. And it's good to know that that information now sits with them.
Yes.
And they know what we're up against. And not that, I hate to use the term up against, but what has kind of been the roadblocks
Yes.
in our
For
way
this-
of trying to move forward?
Mr. Smith, I know you weren't here, but, we had a lengthy meeting and a good discussion with those people last week.
Okay, I have no further on there right now.
Okay. And I know we're going to get all the cooperation we can from the city. I know those people are going to do everything that they can. Those accusations and those comments were so severe made by those people regarding the city. And I mean, it didn't stop just at objectively, they won't do it. They went beyond, and they even got into the capabilities and the personalities and things like that. But I'm sure that you're working with them. But we certainly, and I know the people at the city don't want to be responsible for holding that project up. So I'm sure you're going to be making some positive movement on that. All right, anything else regarding that, Mr. Soto, on the construction you want to add? Members of the board, one last shot at that. Any further discussion?
So Victor, you will eat in that cafeteria this year, I promise. Hopefully.
Did you want to say something about that?
No, I don't. Thank you.
There's an opportunity to
Yes.
talk in that mic. No, I don't want to embarrass you or put you on the spot. I'm just trying to make you feel comfortable and welcome here, all right? For sure. All right, item 3B, discussion, action on the approval of classified hires, Ms. Salaniego.
As presented, you have 3 teachers, actually 4 teachers, and the rest are either emergency subs and substitute teachers.
For discussion, Mr. Lindeman, you want to get
I
it?
move to approve the certified hires.
Is there a second?
Second.
By Ms. Salchow. Members of the board, discussion. Questions, comments?
I see a long list of emergency substitutes.
Yes.
Is that just to
Have
round
a
out
list,
the?
have a list, an ongoing list that we can call at any given time to cover a day or 2.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Salchow?
So these emergency subs are not
No.
long-term subs, or people who are sitting in a position that will be filled by our
No.
new employees that'll be coming?
No, no.
Any questions, comments, Mr. Smith?
No.
Okay. Any further discussion by the administration? Nothing you want to add?
Nothing, no.
Roll call.
Mr. Smith?
Yes,
Ms. Alcha?
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yes,
Mr. Berry?
Yes. Item C, discussion action on the approval of classified hires, Ms. Samaniego.
As presented, you see several different positions being recommended for hire, and I'm glad to see a bus driver on the list.
Motion to approve.
move to approve the classified hires.
Second
Second.
by Ms. Salchow. Discussion? Mr. Lindeman.
Yeah, thank you. Mrs. Samaniego, the bus driver situation, are we still short now, even with this?
Yes, Mrs. Cox, you want to?
We have one vacancy that hopefully for September we will have filled.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
So
We're doing
we're
well
doing
with that.
better.
Yes.
And before we move on, I don't know if there's a vote yet. Is there a vote on this one? Not yet. Not yet, okay, because we do have some new people here that I'd like to introduce after you approve these classified hires.
When, are you, members of the board, any further discussion? When you finally get into that new addition at the high school, talk a little bit about campus security, because of
Magnitude.
yeah, it's so much added responsibilities there. Do you plan to add any security, or is it going to be a reshuffling so that that's adequately covered back there, especially the portion back there by the gym, because that's going to be a major, major issue?
Yeah,
Mr.
two more security officers are going to be included. That's why I encumber for this coming year, along with two other custodians. Again, we're just going to wait and see how that plays out, and if we need to, then we're definitely going to add another one, then we will. But for right now, there's two new positions for this current year, and securities and two custodians allocated.
Members of the board, any further discussion? Roll call.
And you all
Go
saw
ahead.
that building. It is massive, and when you try to see the flow, I told Melissa, we've talked about doing a trial run, getting about 100 kids and see how it's going to flow before we actually are able to move in. And Melissa has requested scooters for her admin team with a laptop center
Yes.
thing so that they could work and motorize themselves over to the back.
Segways.
Yes, segues,
Segues,
yes,
yeah.
exactly. So, anyway, that's
That
what
it?
we have, yes.
Roll call.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Elcha?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes,
Mr. Breen?
Yes, item D, discussion, action on the approval of increase in hours. Ms. Samaniego.
As presented, this is an ESS IA needed to assist with ESS children.
Mr. Lindeman,
move to approve the increase in hours.
second. Ms. Salchow, discussion, members of the board. Is the money for that coming out of, let's see, where was it?
MNO?
It's MNO.
MNO.
SPED.
MNO?
MNO SPED.
SPED. Mhm.
Is it MNO?
MNO SPED.
You want to make sure you're careful with that MNO. After the comments you heard earlier in the meeting, you want to watch that spending, right? Roll call.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Elcha?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes,
Mr. Breen?
Yes, item E.
Mr. Brand?
Discussion, I'm sorry.
I think Ms. Samaniego mentioned to introduce some of the.
Oh, did you
Oh,
have
yes,
some?
yes, I'm sorry, yes. See, I remembered and then I forgot. So if we have any new certified hires here, whether a sub or a teacher, you can come up and introduce yourself, or a classified staff member, I believe Andy is here, if you can come up to the podium. He is our new bus driver, and we're very excited too.
No,
Security, I'm sorry, security. I want to switch you to a bus driver. I got so excited, no, security.
Wow,
Yes,
bus driver was a,
security.
wow,
Let me
okay.
retract.
My name is Andy Galvez, graduated high school, Douglas High School, 99. I retired from Department of Corrections, 2001, 20 years, and I'm very happy to be here.
So he comes with lots
Very
of
happy to-
experience from DOC.
Are you driving a bus or are you security?
I can drive a bus too,
Do you need that somebody with your background to handle those kids on the buses now? Is that-
probably, yeah.
Welcome to DUSD.
Thank
to
you,
the
thank
high
you.
school.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Thank you.
And I believe that is it.
Item, you don't have anybody else?
No, we're now on
E. Yeah, but
Yeah,
you're done with
nobody
the
else is here.
introductions. Item E, discussion action on the approval of classified resignations and retirement. Ms. Samaniego.
We have 4 individuals, three resignations and 1 retirement. Ari Arevalo, custodian after 27 years, is retiring, so as presented. That's a long
Motion,
time.
Mr. Lindman.
I move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
By Ms. Salchow. those are, the effective dates are
there.
indicated there.
Yes.
And none of those are going to be anything that you're going to have to worry about because of the timing or anything?
Well, I think as any position, especially at the high school, Ari Arevalo was a DHS custodian, but we are moving our part-time or sub-custodian into that position. The only other one is Vanessa Fuentes, that is IT's admin assistant, Mr. Durazo's secretary. So I'm glad she is giving us at least a month's notice so we can try to fill in that position. That position is posted, so hopefully we can, Mr. Durazo can fill it. And he's willing to steal from other sites as he needs a secretary. But that's the position for September.
Okay. Roll call.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Salcha?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Breen?
Yes, item F, discussion information only for classified internal transfers, Ms. Samaniego.
As presented, we just switched two parent liaisons from Stevenson to Ferris and from Ferris to Stevenson. So as presented.
Any discussion, members of the board, regarding any of that?
That was, yeah,
Any-
it's just for information.
No,
Mhm,
but
that-
they, questions? Item G, discussion action on the approval of athletic resignation, Ms. Samaniego.
As presented, this is for the assistant track and field coach resignation from Daniel Ellsworth.
Mr. Lindeman,
Move to approve?
is there a second?
Second.
By Ms. Salchow. Discussion, members of the board? Roll call.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Salcha?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Breen?
Yes, item H, discussion action on the approval of addendums, Ms. Samaniego.
You have a long list of addendas and some, CTSOs, teaching extra periods, department chairs, so it's a long list of items or staff that is going to be receiving an addenda. Now, not everybody made it to this meeting, and for example, the middle schools may have a change in the student council sponsor and the yearbook sponsor, and so without having a person in there, I didn't want to just approve it to be announced. So I will bring that to you later, probably in the September meeting, once the schools have their new staffing that is going to take those leadership positions.
Mr. Lindeman,
I move to approve the addendums.
second.
Second.
Members of the board, any discussion regarding the, do you have a job description for every one of those?
We have a job description in your background information for the department chairs. The CTSO sponsors don't necessarily have, let's say, a job description because they are the teacher for their field. And Mrs. Salcha had requested last year that she wanted to know what class they each were a CTSO sponsor for. So we included that. You have Skills USA, you have the HOSAs and their respective classes, and field of study is included. And then you have a little bit of background that was provided as part of their duties. But there is not a job description for like a yearbook sponsor or a drama club sponsor, but you do have one for the department chairs as part of your background.
Board members, you have a question, Ms. Lindeman?
I just have a hypothetical question. If throughout the year, they want to change one of the class sponsors or one of the yearbook sponsors, and we've already approved the addendum, how is that handled?
Well, we're going to have to bring it back. And so the way the addenda works is that, once the board approves, then HR, in this case, Gemma Quiñones, starts working on the addenda paperwork. Then she fills it out, sends it, the employee has to sign it. And I believe they get a choice in selecting how they get paid. Some of them, I believe, have the choice of getting it paid throughout the year or getting one lump sum. So in that case, that addenda for that employee will cease then, and the remaining amount will have to be spread, throughout the remaining pays of when that change happens. So they won't get it all because we don't do it up front, and that is important. People don't just get it up front and say, I'm giving you the 2,500 because we don't know if you're going to work or not. So,
Well, that's what I'm thinking. I think
Yes.
I'm asking that, if someone, for whatever reason, does,
Decides
wants,
not to
wants to
continue.
change the yearbook sponsor.
Yes.
And then another person comes in. So I was just wondering how that's
yes.
handled.
So that's what we would do. We'd have to bring it to the board and look at the amount that's still remaining for the year.
Okay,
Because
okay.
that's what Mr. Soto budgets. It's, he bases it himself on the extra duty stipend amounts for the year.
Okay.
Ms. Salchow, any questions, comments?
No,
Mr.
and I
Schmidt?
really appreciate the job descriptions for the department chair and for the responsibilities for CTSO.
Okay.
Are those all the high school department chairs listed there?
Yes.
That's all of them?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion. Roll call.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Elcha?
Yes,
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Burring?
Yes, item I, discussion action on the approval of athletic addendums for DHS. Ms. Samaniego.
As presented, we always bring all of our athletics separately for the school year. The only thing that you don't see on this year is we left out the summer program, as we do want to have a work-study session regarding all of our athletic programs. And so we're going to bring that to you at a later date for the summer program.
Motion, Mr.
I move to approve the athletic addendums.
Is there a second?
second.
Members of the board, any discussion?
Yeah, this brings up another question, if you don't mind. Don't we usually do one fall and one section at a time, you know, like fall sports, winter sports?
Yes, and so we, if you notice, we bring everybody, we've always brought everybody at the very beginning of the year. What Mrs. Quinones does, if there is I'll give you an example. There may be a person that does two different sports. They won't get, the two addendas until they get to that season. We just approve it all at once, so that we have it. It's just cleaner that way.
Oh, all right.
Okay.
I thought I remembered that we did fall sports and then come next time, then it's winter sports. And so I was just wondering.
Well, you're half right.
Yeah.
Because at
'Cause
one
you've-
time, they were never all brought at this late date in the year. You notice the football coach on there is Hunter Long, right? Of course, they don't get paid until the end of the season, right? The logistics of that, to me, and this was discussed a long time ago, and I think this is what you're alluding to partially, and I don't know if you remembered. You had an inclination, but I don't think you remember it at all. Is what happens is that those coaches, after every season, by policy, they have to be evaluated within 30 days. I would suggest, because you've got Hunter Long on there, he's a football coach. If Hunter Long, last year after football season, he had his debriefing, he had his evaluation conference and so on, and he was probably told, you did an outstanding job and all of the things that go along with that type of an interview. Then nothing is said to him regarding whether he's returning or not. And there is no district interaction as far as saying, we're presenting you, or the athletic director saying on behalf of the administration, you're being recommended to coach next year based on this evaluation and based on my recommendation to the principal and to the administration and of course ultimately to the board, right? Nothing's ever final that comes to the board. But I think that because of that situation, that at the end of the year, when contracts are let to teachers, that the addendums should also go with every single one of them, because by that time, they will have all been evaluated. So you know whether they're going to be evaluated, number one, whether it was acceptable, the performance was approved and something that would be recommended to the board. Then you're not going to have a situation where you start football season, or say school starts, or in the middle of the summer, Hunter Long comes in here and says, I don't want to coach this year. And you haven't gotten anything legally binding. Now, on an addendum, an addendum doesn't fall within the statute. It has nothing to do with offering the contract, which is covered by the statute. But local district policy could say, and this is what I'm going to suggest to the board, because of what you just mentioned, is that those contracts, those addendums are let immediately, and they're told one way or the other, and told that they have a time period to notify the administration whether they're coming back or not next year.
So maybe bring them in.
You bring them at the end of the year, and
in
it
May.
might even be simultaneous with the
Okay.
contracts.
Okay.
You don't want to confuse it, and you don't want to put a lot of extra work on HEMA there, or that department. But it should be done before the end of the year, and then all of these people are locked in. What if the basketball coach comes in tomorrow and says, you know what, I don't feel like I'm on a coach. He has no obligation, none whatsoever, because he hasn't been given that addendum yet, and it hasn't been signed.
And I
So-
do believe that the athletic director, in this case, after he's had that evaluation, he has had that conversation of, you will continue in that role as the football coach. And then he submits the list over to Gemma Quiñones.
But it's verbal.
Yes.
And
So we
there's
will do
nothing in
something
writing
official.
that then puts the onus on
them.
the coach. Say Mr. Vidal says, and here's a form that's part of a board policy, which we will adopt, saying that you need to sign this within 5 days, let us know. If you don't, we declare the position open. And that's in the best interest of the district.
Yes,
All right?
I
And that's for
totally agree.
every single one of these, every one of them. Because you can just look down there and see what would happen if suddenly two coaches decided right before the season that I'm not going to sign that addendum. You have no recourse, none whatsoever.
We'll
Okay?
bring it in May next
All right, so we have a motion on the floor.
Yes, sir.
Members of the board, was that partially what you were talking
Yeah,
about?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and we had a discussion regarding that a long time ago, and it never happened. And every time it comes and I see it, I think, I don't know why nothing was ever said about that, but that should be the logistics of doing that, okay? All right, any further discussion, members of the board?
I have a
Mr.
couple of
Go
questions.
go ahead, Janet.
I would like to know, just for information only, about how many students do we have out for cross-country and the fall sports? Just ballpark.
At the present time, for cross-country, there are 7 students.
Okay.
There's still students being added.
And
To
football?
the football, we have 57.
Swimming
Swimming, 60.
and volleyball.
Volleyball, 38.
Nice numbers. Nice numbers.
Anything else, Ms. Houchel?
That's,
Any further discussion, Mr. Lindeman, Mr. Smith? Anything else the administration wants to add?
We're good. We will bring, for next year, we'll bring them in May, and we'll have an internal process where it says, we have an official document signed by the coach and given to them
Well,
after their season.
we're gonna have to
avoid-
change the policy,
Yeah.
and I don't think of it right off, but it's the policy that deals with the extra pay. And then, for coaches, it's the coach's salary schedule. It's I'm not gonna even try to remember. It's one of the G policies, but at the bottom,
Yeah, 'cause-
it's the one that specifically states that they will be evaluated within 30 days, and the approval, and then a recommendation will be made. That's where we're gonna add that they will sign, that by district policy,
addenda.
that they will have 5 or 10 days to sign. You discuss that with the administration and see what would be feasible, a feasible length of time for that. At the end of the year, if you haven't had the football coach, for instance, sign, and you go all summer, and he calls you and says, I'm leaving town, I want to break my teaching contract as well, then you can see the chaos that would cause, okay? All right, so, anyway, I'm sorry I didn't bring that up a long time ago. All right, we had a motion and it passed, right?
Yes.
All
I
right.
need,
You need to call, roll call.
Yes. Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Elcha?
yes.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yes,
Mr. Burry?
Yes. And I'm going to give you my proxy, so that when I forget to call for you just say roll call, and you won't embarrass me, all right? And then if I don't want the roll call yet because I want more discussion, then you're going to be in trouble, right? I'm just kidding you. I'm just kidding you. Okay, item I, discussion action on the approval of athletic addendums for DHS.
Actually, we just got done.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's one we just did. Item J, discussion action on the approval of volunteers. That's the next conversation. Go ahead.
And so you have a list of existing and returning volunteers from for the various different athletic programs we have.
Get a motion on the floor.
I move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
maybe this is a redundant question, but when they volunteer, they have to go through the fingerprint and all of
Yes,
those.
and all of these because they are returning. I think there's just one new one, Joseph Salcido, and if you see, he doesn't have an asterisk. Everybody already has a fingerprint, everybody already had filled out the form, so those are the returning.
Oh,
And the new one had to go through all that process.
Okay, very good.
And
And there is an
Mr.
evaluation of them as well, right?
Yes, and
All-
Mr.
all of
Vidal
the
has
volunteers?
been part of that and communicating with Hema and submitting the list of volunteers that he'd like to see return.
Okay, any further discussion, members of the board? Anybody, anything from HR regarding that?
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Elcha?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Breen?
Yes. Item K, discussion action on adopting teacher strategies goal TSG as the kinder entry assessment tool for school year 2023-24, Ms. Samaniego.
So basically what you have here, and you've heard Mrs. Herrera come before you when we approved the literacy coach, the new position, which would be overseeing and supporting all of our K-3 teachers. So this came from ADE. And so now Kinder has to have this assessment that takes place in the first 45 days. And the training started last year with teachers. ADE, gotta love ADE, they change their mind, then they go back, and then they give us another option, and now it's up to you to decide what assessment you want. You don't have to go with the TSG, but we already trained our teachers, and we're back and forth. So finally, they made a decision, and we need to bring it to the board for approval so that it stays on record that this is what the kinder early assessment will be done for DUSD in the first 45 days, and you had some background information there. You had actually some information from AD that Mrs. Herrera provided for you. So this will be our kinder early assessment.
Can I get a motion, Mr. Linder?
Move to approve.
Second,
Second.
by Ms. Salchow. Discussion, questions?
I'm just curious, before this assessment, was there a previous assessment done?
Not an official assessment. This is all coming down from AD, and I think it's because of third grade reading scores. And so they really want to identify kids earlier on. And the only, this is what preschool teachers have to do for their preschool kids, a lot more extensive. And so now Kinder is mirroring this. So.
Any further discussion? Administration? Roll call.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Elcha?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Breen?
Yes, item L, discussion action on the approval of payment to teachers and long-term substitutes that attended the new teacher induction training. Ms. Samaniego.
As presented, you have before you the list of teachers, and there are 3 long-term subs. And the only reason that they are there, because they are going to be the teacher of record and have to lesson plan and have to do everything until the teacher is able to arrive and start with their proper certification. So teachers are going to be paid $150 a day for the 3 days, and the substitute rate is $105 per day. And this was thanks to Mr. Lindemann addressing this, and we used to pay them a long time ago through grant funding. And then I think the grant, right when Mrs. Salchow was running the program, and then the funding went away, they stopped paying them, but it is, we want them to have this professional development before they start teaching, and so we're paying them now.
Okay, so it's right that you make the motion, Mr.
Yes.
Lindemann?
Yeah, I move to approve then.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, further discussion?
I just-
How did you pay them on a timesheet?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
And I just wanted to say thank you to the administration, because my belief was that if you're a professional doing professional work,
You
you should be
paid.
compensated.
Yes,
Thank you.
exactly. So now Mr. Soto has to budget that in every year.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Elcha?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Breen?
Yes, and by the way, that's going to have to be brought to the board every
every year.
year, so just so you know. Item M, discussion action on the approval of qualified evaluator for fiscal year 2023-24, Ms. Samaniego.
And this is just adding Miss Bianca Hernandez. We had inadvertently left her out from the list that we brought to you last time, so we needed to add her as a evaluator.
Entertain a motion?
I move to approve.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Elcha?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Bereen?
Yes. Item N, discussion action on the approval of the 301 performance pay plan for the 2023-24 school year pursuant to ARS 15-977. Ms. Samaniego.
Yes, so before you have Mrs. Barayardo, who is the 301 committee chair, and her committee have, they worked on the 301 plan and I believe did some tweaks and updates. And so the 301 plan, as you know, gives this extra money, what we call the classroom site fund, based on out of ARS 15-977. And so under the presented 301 plan, eligible members include teachers, counselors, librarians with a teaching certificate, and nurses. And they, of course, have to submit a plan that they have to follow all year long. They have to do some assessments with students and have to submit their final plan to the committee, which then gets reviewed and approved by the committee or denied or sent it back. You need more evidence, more data in order for teachers to receive the 301 funding. Also, under subsection H of the Classroom Site Fund, per ARS 15-977, is subsection H of Classroom Site Fund, which also provides the eligible members to receive 301. Part of the Classroom Site Fund money are the TOSAs under the teacher development criteria, and additional support staff, counselors without a teaching certificate, and the behavior specialist under student support services criteria. And I've listed the subsection H there. And so while our 301 plan is very detailed about what are the requirements for the plan and who gets it, subsection H allows those individuals to also receive part of that classroom site fund. So my recommendation is to approve the plan under the 301 for eligible members, to include teachers, counselors, nurses, librarians with a teaching certificate, and under subsection H, the TOSAs and support staff included.
Okay, and if you'll make that motion according to the way she stated that.
Yes, I move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Just for the sake, especially for the board, give a little explanation about that 301 money, Mr. Soto. How you use it, how it's incorporated, what percentage is that of, because it's broken down in percentages. So explain a little bit to the board, just for general information.
Okay, so these monies were voter approved, if I remember correctly, it was back in 2000, and then it had to come back to the voters in 2020. So a portion of a tax, sales tax, goes to this fund. And of course, we have this regulation that we have to follow. It was a little bit more complicated in the past. Now, luckily, they just now have everything under one big fund. But we still treat it as separate because the components are 40, and 20, and 40% of those monies goes for the performance plan. So it depends on how much money the state collects to then distributes to the districts depending on enrollment. Again, we've been very lucky that every year it keeps increasing and increasing. This past year was a total of 13,000, if I remember correctly. So it seems like this year is going to increase at least 1 or 1.5% more. So again, it all depends on how much money is collected and how much money we have, or the state sent us at that time when we make the payments. That's what we just distribute between the number of participants and people that qualifies. And I think that's all in a nutshell.
I think the important thing too is the board knows that money is not money that the board allots out of the goodness of their heart. That's
Right.
mandated, right?
Right,
Just so
right,
you
correct.
know that we don't have any discretion with that.
And what is not mandated is the way that the district utilizes it, because under subsection H, part of those funds can be used for any of those, one of them being classroom, class size reduction. And so a lot of, I will say that DUSD gives it 100% to our staff. We don't use it for salaries, we don't use it for classroom size reduction. Insurance premiums is another component that we can use some of that money for. And so for us, that's a big selling point. You know, a lot of districts will add part of it to their salary, so it makes it seem like the base salary is higher, and when it really isn't, because if that money goes away, or if, you know, the state collects less money, then that's going to be an effect for our teachers. So last year, 13,500 is what they got, and they get it in 3 payments. So December is a December bonus, and then in May they get 2 separate checks. So it's a nice added bonus for all, you know, everything else that we're not able to do with, let's say, the base salary at this point.
Some districts do that under the guise of we gave you a raise. They didn't do anything. That came from the state. That's the thing I want to make clear, so that when we deliberate, the 301 money is a given, that we don't even take that into consideration as whatever percentage we do for the teachers. So just down the line, everybody is aware of that. So we have a motion on the floor?
Yes, sir.
Any further discussion or questions?
I was just
Go
going
ahead.
to want to mention that this board and previous boards that I've been on have always given 100% to the teachers, and so that is part of our philosophy of fully supporting. So,
Janet, Ms. Sasha?
If you have a part-time teacher, half-time teacher, do they qualify?
No.
It's a full-time teacher.
And
We don't have any real part-time teachers, yeah.
It depends on when they were hired.
Hired too.
Yeah.
There's a timeline. If they were hired at a certain point, they get, you know, either half of the 301. If they get hired after January something, then they don't qualify. Yeah, so there's some parameters around the 301.
Okay, and then, before we take the vote, Andrea, you're the chair of that committee, right? Yes. Is there anything you want to add? I mean, we're ready to go, but I always like to give everybody an opportunity. Anything you want to say about those monies, or any of the logistics of getting to where the recommendation was? I think it's important to always have as much discussion as possible.
Mr. Ray, Ms. Samaniego, members of the school board, I just want to say that the 301 committee worked very hard and getting the 301 to be completely in compliance with the state, as well as we're very meticulous in checking all of the plans and the reports to make sure that all of the teachers are doing what they're supposed to do to increase learning in the students.
I'm glad you said that, because you, members of the board, you see all the background of what they had to do to comply to get that money. Thank you. I just wanted you to get a little credit for that. All right?
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Elcha?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
yes,
Mr. Breen?
Yes. Item O, discussion action on the approval of out-of-state travel for IT department staff to attend the Valcom technical training. Ms. Samaniego.
This is a request to allow Mr. Marco Durazo and Pedro Samaniego to attend this training, and it is out of state. There were, this is for the new intercom system at the addition at the high school. And so this is all very high-tech. Mr. Durazo and Mr. Peter need to learn how to manage it so that we don't have any issues. And when we do have issues, they're prepared to adjust. And unfortunately, the out-of-state travel, the training is only out of state, and the nearest place would be in Florida.
Florida? Fort Lauderdale?
Yes. Yes, unfortunately, or, you know,
Can any of us go?
I'm just kidding, Marco.
yes, can any of us
Marco's
go?
gonna shut this whole thing down.
chaperones or chaperones.
Chaperone. He needs 3 chaperones. Yes, it's too hot.
Okay, let's get a motion.
I move to approve.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
None, so we hope this new system works.
I would like to ask or throw in a few comments.
Uh-huh.
I hope that the new building is not going to echo as bad as the old building, and also on a serious side, I was wondering if you would receive a report from this travel that maybe you could share with the
Okay,
board.
we'll have Mr. Durazo give that report when he gets back. And I do believe, Mr. Durazo, I know you're managing our live board meeting, but your plan is to eventually make the existing high school have that new system as the new addition, right? So right now they're going to merge?
Yes, they will interface together.
Uh-huh.
And eventually make one wing at a time. We'll be upgrading so that it's all in one.
Because that will cost us money, and that'll be, our responsibility. So that's his plan, probably to try to do it one wing at a time if we can't do more. But-
Okay.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Elcha?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Breen?
Yes, item P, discussion action on the approval to appoint Ms. Jana Salchow to represent DUSD 27 as the district delegate to the Arizona School Boards Association Delegate Assembly on September the 9th, 2023. Mr. Lindeman?
I move to approve that we appoint Ms. Salchow as delegate.
I second.
Any discussion? Jana, did anything, or Mitch, you want to say you did that for years?
No, go ahead, Mitch.
Yeah, I was really proud to be doing that and to be our delegate. And before me was Dr. Gomez, and before Dr. Gomez was Mr. Ramos and stuff. So it's very valuable, and I appreciated the support and everything. And I'm glad to pass it to Ms. Salchow.
I know you are.
Where is it, by the way?
It's in Phoenix. It's with the
Law
the law conference.
Board
It's on
members have to
Saturday.
go to Phoenix or Tucson, right? Staff goes to Florida. And you got to talk to ASBA about that.
You could authorize Mr. Smith. He volunteered to go with Marco and Mr. Lindemann, so
Roll
more-
call.
the more the
Go-
merrier.
Go ahead. Do you have anything else?
No.
You want to add, anything you want to add to any of that, Jana?
No,
Mr.
not really. It was a really interesting experience last year. I'll be better prepared. I was just kind of like, huh? This is so different, and it is. But it's a learning experience.
It's valuable. It has to do with our politics, and of course, that's a
little
statement in
shocking.
itself.
It's a little shocking.
Roll call.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Elcha?
Abstain, or recuse.
You can vote on it.
I didn't think I
Yeah,
could vote
well,
on
you
it
don't have
since
any
it's my
monetary interest in it.
Okay, well then, yes.
Oh.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Breen?
Yes, the conflict of interest, you have to have what they call a proprietary interest, a monetary interest. You have no interest in that.
No,
So, you're fine.
okay.
And then if I'm wrong, you're in trouble.
No, we're on record.
No, I'm just kidding. Item Q, discussion action on the approval of the Arizona School Boards Association ABA Draft 2024 political agenda and direct the district's delegate to the ASBA Delegate Assembly to represent the board's determined position. I'll just immediately go to the board discussion on that. Get a motion on the floor to approve.
I move to approve the ASBA's political agenda.
Is there a second?
I second.
By Ms. Howard. Is there anything that, Jana, that you want the board to adopt that you officially take on behalf of the district, or?
When you look at the core beliefs that's listed in the background, these are very, all-encompassing. We want our students to, receive the best, educational process we possibly can with funding that backs it up from our state and federal government. We want to make sure they're safe. That was a big conversation last year, with safety for students in our schools and our employees. So, not really. I don't have very much to add to that.
Okay, so we'll just leave it that way, and then you just attend and bring back whatever you think is worthy.
Okay.
Okay? Go ahead.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Elcha?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Breen?
Yes, item R, Discussion action on the approval of student teachers teaching under the University of Arizona Pathway Program. Ms. Samaniego.
Yes, as presented, currently the 4 student teachers are Dariana Salazar, Livia Sosa, Amaraini Miramontes, and Paulina Alcaraz. And so this is through the partnership we have with the University of Arizona. So this is an ongoing student teaching program.
Mr. Lindeman.
I move to approve.
Second? Second. By Ms. Salchow. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Elcha?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Breen?
Yes. Item S, discussion action pursuant to policy BGF to temporarily suspend policy BGB, requiring 2 readings of the proposed policies prior to approval of the adoption in order to approve policy BEDF immediately upon first reading. Mr. Lindeman,
I move to approve.
is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Salchow. Any discussion? The only change was in the policy, members of the board, is we dropped the word abstention, and then so that it'll allay any fears about what the other option is. It's either vote aye or nay, and then of course in the policy itself, it's self-explanatory. It says, in addition, excuse me, no member of the board shall refrain from voting except upon matters involving the consideration of the member's official conduct or in such matters as the member may have a conflict of interest, as set forth by board policy and any provision that is applicable by state law, and that's in the 38 code, and that's very, very self-explanatory. So that's the reason we did that. There was no need for the abstention on there. And the only time that you don't vote is if you have a conflict. All right, so do we have a motion?
Yes, sir.
Roll call.
Mr. Smith?
Excuse me, a discussion.
Oh, I was just
Go ahead.
going to mention that philosophically, elected officials are elected to make decisions, and it should be in the affirmative or the negative, and you can't waffle. So I'm glad that we're putting that into policy.
Very good. Is there any further discussion regarding that? And then again, for clarification, if there's a conflict of interest, that's the only other time that a board member would recuse themselves. And it's provided for there, and it's also provided by the statute. And I agree 100%. You know, too many times boards you feel a lot of pressure from the community or political pressure, and they'll abstain. And then if you get more than one abstention, and then you're running the risk of not having a quorum. And not taking any action on anything. So if you read all of the literature about abstentions, you know, it'll tell you that regardless of what our attorney says, as it was her personal opinion, that board members and public officials are elected to represent the community and vote yes or no on things and not abstain and take the easy way out. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Elcha?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Breen?
Yes, announcements.
We have Labor Day already, a day off, Monday, September 4th, and our next regular board meeting is on September 5th.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
By Mr. Lindeman, second.
Second.
By Ms. Salchow. All those in favor?